In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Chris is going to read some verses from Genesis 1, Genesis 1, 1 to 3, and then Genesis 1, 24 to 31. So thank you very much, Chris.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God said, "Let the land produce living creatures according to their kinds, livestock, creatures that move along the ground, and wild animals, each according to its kind." And it was so. God made the wild animals according to their kinds, the livestock according to their kinds, and all the creatures that move along the ground according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over the livestock, over the earth, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, and over every living creature that moves on the ground." Then God said, "I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food. And to all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds of the air, and all the creatures that move on the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food." And it was so. God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning, the sixth day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. I want to start a new series this morning. It is a series in which I preach one sermon on every book of the Bible. So one sermon on Genesis, one sermon on Exodus, one sermon on Leviticus, and so on. I won't deliberately spread them out as I did for the 5 messages on Tulip. So we'll be finished in no time. I want to do 2 things with each sermon. One, I want to show where the book fits in to biblical theology. Have you heard of the difference between biblical theology and systematic theology? Systematic theology is when theologians study various aspects of the Christian life. For example, baptism, eldership, the church, creation, salvation, sanctification, and they get these. They think about them theologically, biblically, logically, and they try to place each part into a theological watertight system as a whole. That's systematic theology. But biblical theology is a little bit different. Biblical theologians treat the Bible as one long narrative, one long story with a unified plot, a unified theme, and it can be very, very interesting to see where each book fits into the overall narrative. If we run into Jesus from time to time, you mustn't be surprised, because Jesus did say, the scriptures point to me. That's the first thing that I would do each morning. And the second thing, I will try to bring you a word from the book, a living word from the book. So, Genesis. Without any further ado, Genesis. The author was Moses. He wrote in Genesis anytime from 1450 BC to 1410. If you ask, how did Moses know everything that happened before he was born, I say, have you read Paradise Lost? If you haven't, you're in for a treat. With Paradise Lost, the angel Gabriel is sent to Adam, and Gabriel tells Adam all the things that happened before Adam was created, including the fall of Satan. Now, Paradise Lost is a beautiful work of fiction. So I'm not going to argue from Paradise Lost to the Bible, but biblically, what probably happened was this. God would have told Adam, it would be strange if he hadn't, walking with him in the cool of the evening. So God would have told Adam. Adam would have told Seth. Seth would have told Methuselah. Methuselah would have told Noah. Noah would have told Shem. Shem would have told Abraham, who would have told Isaac, who would have told Jacob, who would have told Joseph. Joseph was taken into Egypt, and maybe Joseph wrote it down, and Moses came along later and read Joseph's writing. That's what could have happened, and maybe it is probably what did happen. But if we want to go from probability to certainty, it says in Acts 7:39 that God and Moses encountered the angel on top of Mount Sinai. The angel of the Lord is the Lord. The angel of the Lord is interchangeable with the Lord. The angel of the Lord gave Moses words of life. So, and with direct communication from God to Moses. All the early church fathers, in fact, the whole church has believed that, until recently, that Moses wrote Genesis. Jesus believed that Moses wrote the books of Moses. It says that Jesus says, John 5:46, if you don't, he said to his opponents, if you do not believe Moses, you will not believe me. And Jesus referred to the burning bushes and other places. And Jesus said, when God spoke to Moses out of the burning bush. So Jesus believed that Moses wrote the books of Moses, of course. And so if it is good enough for Jesus to believe that Moses wrote Genesis, it's good enough for me to believe that. there is a person who hates the book of Genesis. And he hates the book of Revelation as well. In fact, he hates the whole Bible. That's Satan. He hates the book of Genesis, and he hates the book of Revelation because in Genesis, Satan's downfall is predicted, and in Revelation, Satan's downfall is described. And so Satan attacks the book of Genesis and the book of Revelation, and in fact the whole Bible. He tries to discredit the whole Bible, but with his diabolical intelligence, ironically, he has come up with the same way. He has killed two birds with one stone, but he destroys belief in Genesis in the same way that he destroys belief in Revelation. And that's that. That is this way. He confuses the people how to as to the genre of the books. He confuses the people with Revelation so that he deceives the people into thinking that Revelation is a kind of future history. And people just put it into the too hard basket because they don't really know how to read it as being future history. And he confuses people as to Genesis, as to the genre of Genesis, because he deceives people into thinking that the Genesis is poetry, myth, morality tale, symbol, anything but literal historic narrative, when in fact Genesis is historic narrative. This is poetry. This is Hebrew poetry. He makes the clouds his chariot, and he rides upon the wings of the wind. That's poetry. But Genesis doesn't read like that. It reads as historic narrative. The grammar is the same in Genesis, even Genesis 1 to 12, as it is in the grammar is the same in the books of history, like Samuel and Kings and Chronicles. In fact, all the best Hebraists, and all the most reputable universities in the whole world all agree with each other in saying that the author of Genesis, they don't say the divine author because they are liberal, but they do say the author of Genesis intended his readers to understand that God created the whole universe in 6 24-hour days. That you can date approximately the age of the earth by chronogenealogies. If you add up the precise number of years from Adam, that will give you a more or less accurate date of the age of the earth, and the Noah's flood was universal and not just localized. They then go on. The reputable scholars then go on to say that they don't believe a word of it. but at least they're honest enough to show you what the Bible means, even though being liberal, they don't believe what it says. But I'm not a liberal. I'm an evangelical reformed pastor, and I do believe that Genesis says what it means. Like a little child, Jesus said, unless you become like little children in your belief, you won't see the kingdom of heaven. So, moreover, all the early church fathers believed this as well. I've read excerpts from the following authors, the following writers. I've read excerpts from Josephus, and he was not Christian, but he was a Jewish historian. Josephus, Irenaeus, Justin Martyr, Augustine, Origen, jumping ahead to the Middle Ages, St. Thomas Aquinas, then jumping ahead to the Reformation, I have read Martin Luther and John Calvin, and jumping ahead to Great Awakening, I have read John Wesley, and they all say, but I've read the excerpt, they all say that they believe that Genesis says what it means and means what it says. That God created the whole world in 6 literal 24-hour days. And then the 1700s came along, and these were called the days of the Enlightenment. And there was a sea change in how man regarded their authority. Before the Enlightenment, the people placed their authority in the church and also reason. But from the 1700s onwards, known as the days of the Enlightenment, there came a change in the people, and they no longer placed the authority in the church, and reason, but pure reason. Reason was autonomous. They trusted in pure reason, not reason plus the church. And that gave rise to a massive hostility against the Bible. And then in the 1700s, the belief in the Bible waned and ebbed, and the belief in long ages came to be. And halfway through the 19th century, a man called Thomas Lyell wrote the 3-volume work, The Principles of Geology. His stated intention in writing it, and he says in the introduction, he said, we simply must get Moses out of geology. Moses and the books of Moses, and so on. So he proposed that the whole earth was about 2 million years old. And then it didn't take much for people to believe that Thomas Lyell rather than the Bible. And then Charles Darwin thought that Charles Lyell was just great because Charles Darwin needed millions of years for his system of evolution to cook up life. And then So now the 2 million years of Charles Lyell has grown and expanded to 13.8 billion years, the age of the universe, and counting them. So what are we to do? What are Bible-believing Christians to do with modern popular science? There are three methods. There are three attitudes of modern Christians to modern science. Three. The first and the third are either or. They employ either or, and the second method is both and. Let me explain. Some Christians believe the Bible literally, just like I have said. The first 1800, 1700 years of the church life, they believe in Genesis, just as Jesus believed in Genesis. So when it comes to either the Bible or science, these Christians will challenge science, not the Bible. The second way is what we call conservative compromisers. So they believe in the Bible, but they also believe in the modern science, billions of years old. So they want to try to make the two be true as one, and simultaneously. So they try to shoehorn in billions of years into the Bible. It doesn't really work, but at least they're Bible-believing Christians, and they take the Bible seriously. And then the third method is back to either or. This is a liberal position. If it comes to a clash between the Bible, the authority of the Bible, versus the authority of science, the authority of science trumps the authority of the Bible every time. So they're not compromisers. They don't try to squeeze in millions of years into the Bible. They just don't believe the Bible. But they do believe in science. So that's the three ways. It'll come as no surprise to you that I'm a Bible-believing Christian, and I would say that the authority of science trumps, and then the authority of the Bible trumps the authority of man-made hostile scientists to God. So I'm of the first perspective. If it comes to a clash between the Bible and science, I challenge science, not the Bible. And so I would urge you to read Genesis as it's meant to be read. Read it as it was written. Read it as a child would read it. Read it as Jesus read it. Read it as it's meant to be read. Read it to get understanding and salvation. Read it, in the end, read it believingly. Genesis is a book of beginnings. Genesis is an account of the fall. Genesis is an account of the fall. Genesis begins with God and ends with a covenant. It begins with God and it ends with a coffin. That's a fall. But before that, the first 6 days, in the first day, God said, "Let there be light." So God created light, and there was the contrast between the light and darkness. And on the second day, he separated off the firmament above from the firmament below. And then the third day, he separated off water from the dry land, and he created plant life. And the fourth day, he created the sun, the moon, and the stars. And the fifth day, he created birds, the birds of the air, and the fish of the sea. The birds of the air would probably have included bats, because bats fly, and the fish and the sea would have probably included the mammals and dolphins and whales. And on the sixth day, he created land animals, and finally, the highly privileged apex of his creation, he created man in his own image. Genesis 2 repeats the creation account, but has its spotlight on our first parent. Genesis 3 tells of the beginning of sin. Genesis 3 1-7, and Genesis 3:8 onwards, it tells of the beginning of the revelation of our redemption. Genesis 4 1-15 tells of the beginning of the human families, and 4:16 to the end. 4:16 to the end of chapter 9, it tells us of the beginning of godless civilizations. Chapter 10 speaks of the origin of the nations. Very, very interesting. Chapter 11 tells us of the confusion of languages. Chapter 12 tells us of the beginning of the Hebrew family, the Hebrew race. We have already alluded to Satan and the fall. In Genesis 3, we have the fall. Satan deceived Eve, who deceived Adam. Satan deceived Eve into doubting God's word. He still does say, did God really say? So he erodes or undermines belief in the word of God. And he deceived Eve into thinking that by eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, it would make her be like God, and that she would really know. So she and he did eat of it, and they got knowledge, but it was hardly the knowledge they had bargained for. They knew evil by becoming evil. That act of disobedience was the dethroning of God, the de-godding of God, and the usurpation of God by man. Man climbed onto God's throne, and from every son of Adam and every daughter of Eve ever since have been the center of the universe. God should be the center of the universe, because he was, after all, God who created the whole thing. But ever since the fall, every person is the center of the universe. And if you doubt that, a little experiment, you're handed a photograph and you know that you are one of the people in the photograph, to whom who do you search for first in the photograph? But this is, we say that Genesis 3:8 on and following says the beginning of the revelation of our redemption. Satan was told that his seed would be fighting the seed of the woman, and the seed of the woman would ultimately crush his head, and he would bruise the seed of the woman's feet. And 4,000 years later, Jesus, the true seed of the woman, was on the cross, having his heels bruised, but crushing Satan's head. But just go back for a minute. The most disastrous verse in the Bible is the woman. When the woman saw that it was good, the fruit was good, she took of it and ate it, and she gave some moreover to her husband, and he ate it. So you could say that the woman said, "Take and eat." She took the fruit and ate it, and you could say that Jesus, she said to her husband, "Take and eat." And the day before Jesus went to the cross, it was the last supper, and he took the bread and the wine. He said, "Take and eat." Verbs of redemption. Take and eat. And if you come to Jesus, he will save you and give you a life, and he will cancel the effects of the fall, which is to make you the center of the universe, and he will turn your orientation around of your whole being, and you will henceforth live for God and Jesus. Take and eat. The seed of the woman. Come to Jesus. Amen.